Hi, this is Lori Rebar, and I wanted to share with you about backwards design, otherwise known as Understanding by Design. The book that actually goes along with backward design is called Understanding by Design, sometimes abbreviated by its initials UBD. And its authors are Grant Wiggins, who passed away last year, and Jay McTighe. And McTighe is an educational consultant and is still very involved in writing, lecturing, etc. It was published by Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development in 1998. It is now at its second expanded edition, and it was published by ASCD. They changed their name, and that second edition was published in 2005. So one of the first questions is why backwards design? And the authors put this quote in their book by Stephen Covey: "To begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are now, so that the steps you take are always in the right direction." So what are the stages of backward design? There are 3 stages, and in fact, backward design does have some similarities to the ADDIE model, but they have only 3 stages in backward design. The first being identifying the desired results or outcomes, the second to determine acceptable evidence, or the assessment portion, and then the third to plan learning experiences and instruction, so that being the teaching and experience portion for the students. There's a unit template that is part of their workbook that they've created, and that contains some really nice ways to be able to put together the planning. This is set up so it really works best with units rather than with individual lessons, although you would take the goals, etc., from the units, and as you are creating the actual teaching or learning modules, then you would go into more of the lesson plans themselves. But for the first stage, they use G for goals, so every time you are marking something and it's a goal, you could put the G beside it. U for understanding, asking that question or the statement. Students will understand that. Q for the essential questions. K, what knowledge will the students have? Students will know. S, what skills will they have? Students will be able to. Stage 2 is the assessment, and where you actually have evidence of the student learning. So you have performance tasks where the students are actually doing some sort of performance to show their knowledge, versus other evidence, which would be more of the quizzes, etc. Stage 3 is learning plan, and that's where the actual learning activities are planned out. So first, at stage 1, identifying desired results, some questions that might be asked are what long-term transfer goals are desired? And this is all about looking for transfer goals, transfer of knowledge to real-life situations. Ultimately, what should students know, understand, and be able to do after they have gone through this learning process? And then what are the essential questions that students will explore? And these are looking at larger questions that involve critical thinking, do not necessarily have yes or no answers. They also talk about what are the big ideas that students need to know, things like what is the moral of the story, and what should students take away with them, and then what knowledge and skill will the students acquire to be able to use this in the future. In identifying the desired results, they've established this model on the right for establishing curricular priorities. And the smallest one is the enduring understanding. That is what students will take away and keep with them. It's kind of what they've internalized through the lesson. Important to know and do would be major concepts, and worth being familiar with might be more of the factual elements. One thing to note in their goal of understanding things, they use the word understanding to talk about making meaning of big ideas so that there's personal meaning for students. And the autonomous transfer of learning to new situations. So as students come up against new situations, that they are able to have automatic transfer or to be able to think through things and transfer that knowledge. So some considerations for stage 1 in the desired results would be those initials we saw: G for established goals, U for understanding or understandings, Q for essential questions, K what students will know, and S what students will be able to do as a skill. There's a template from their workbook that has question prompts, and these are very helpful because as you go through and you're thinking about putting together the lesson, looking at the goals and the objectives, looking at the standards that might be directed by state or national agencies, etc., trying to determine what the objectives are, what the learning outcomes will be, rather than looking at the textbook, actually looking at what you want the desired outcomes to be, what you want students to get as far as their understanding, and also making sure that things are not going to be misunderstood. Some misunderstandings can be predicted, and being able to think about those ahead of time. What kind of questions will foster that inquiry, understanding, and the transfer of knowledge or learning, and then what knowledge and skills are the students going to be able to obtain from this. Next is determining acceptable evidence. So that's the assessment phase. And it talks about what performances and products will reveal evidence of meaning making and transfer. So these might be more active types of assessment. They might involve group projects or collaboration. One of the things that I had read in conjunction with this is that we are looking at students who ultimately in their work are going to be asked to work in collaborative situations. And so this type of framework allows teachers to go ahead and think of models of collaboration so that students can get experience in doing this. Also, what other evidence besides these performances or products might be desired to be able to see results. And another thing to think about in regard to this is that they are constantly saying it's not just about testing one time, it's also having the students be able to take a look and see their self-progress, and also be able to kind of test themselves as they're going along to be able to identify their strengths or their weaknesses in what they're learning. So considerations for evidence might be those performance tasks, the other evidence like quizzes, tests, homeworks, journals, and also that rubrics must be established in order for not only the teacher but for the students to understand right from the onset what is required of them and what manner they're going to be graded on. Again, one of those question prompt things that I found, this talks about the authentic performance tasks that demonstrate student understanding, and also what criteria the performances of understanding will be judged, that being the rubric, and then the other evidence, whether it's homework, just different things to be able to determine. Those might include more of the factual kinds of things versus things that, like performance, that would show the transfer of knowledge, and also being able to have students reflect and do a self-assessment of their learning. They also recommend using GRASP with an S, using it as an acronym when developing performance tasks. So the G would stand for goal. What kind of scenario will this be in? R will be the role that the student will play in it, in that performance task. A will be the audience that the student is going to be performing for, whether it's in a group or a small group or just what. The situation, which would be the setting, the context, opportunities, constraints, just everything about that situation. And then the performance or the product, what is specifically expected so that students know and they're not walking into a minefield of not understanding what is expected of them. And then the standards that they are going to be graded by, the rubric, so that they understand that also. The authors Wiggins and McTighe also came up with 6 facets of understanding and suggested using it as a framework to build appropriate assessment tasks. Now, they don't indicate that you should be doing every single one of these, or every single one of these facets should apply to every single assessment, but for you to consider these, because these tend to be, and think about Bloom's hierarchy, or their Bloom's taxonomy of learning, and you'll see that these are all action words. So being able to explain about what they've learned, to interpret it in a different way, to apply it in a new situation, to gain a perspective, looking at it from somebody else's point of view, to have empathy for that point of view, and then also to have self-understanding. The third thing is planning the learning experiences and the actual instruction. So unlike where some teachers may plan the activities first, this puts planning activities and experiences and instruction at the very end, after the goals and outcomes and objectives have been set, and after the assessments have determined the evidence of learning. So they suggest what activities, experiences, and lessons will lead to the achievement of desired results and success at the assessment. So you're teaching to the assessment, but beyond that, you're also teaching for the understanding. And the second point talks about that, with helping students with acquisition, making meaning of, and being able to transfer what they've learned. And then also being able to sequence the unit and be able to make it so that all of the students are going to equally be able to understand and perform well at the assessment. So learning activities are going to be those that will teach for understanding. And this is a similar question prompt. And there's another one I found that I'm going to show you that I think makes it a little easier to see. They've bolded any of the letters. So W is where are we going? Y, what's expected? H, how are we going to hook and hold student interest? We know that's important. How are we going to equip the students for their expected performances? R will be to help students rethink and revise, also so they can gauge their progress. E would be for self-evaluation as they reflect on their own learning, and that's using open-ended questions. T, to tailor learning to the various students' needs, knowledge, etc., and using various activities for that. And then to organize and sequence the learning so it could be used in a variety of approaches. More about backwards design: it's not just teaching to the test. Assessment checks for the transfer of knowledge and not just the memorization of facts. It's not a facts by rote type of thing. It looks for real-world transfer tasks to be used in assessment to check student understanding of big ideas and to transfer. And always suggest that you check the alignment of all of your stages 1, 2, and 3 against each other, and then adjust the plan as needed. If you want to learn more about backwards design, there's 3 different websites I found that are very good. Grant Wiggins, who's passed away, this is his website now, Authentic Online Education. The ASCD website, the publisher, has articles and more there. And then Jay McTighe, who is now doing educational consulting, has his own website, and you'll see within it separate links for websites, downloads, videos, and articles. I have also listed references, and if you find that there are things that you'd like to discuss about this or questions you might have, please let me know. Thank you. And I'm sorry for this taking longer. I'm using 2 screens.